3, 2, 1. So, foodies, I am here with you today, not live. I know that we're watching Bariatric Foodie Live, but we are not live right now because I am here with my good friend and week 3 sponsor, Kristin Lloyd. And tell me how you pronounce your last name.
Oh, my married last name.
Moussa. Okay, I'm big on pronouncing people's names correctly. So Kristin Lloyd Moussa, and she is a busy lady. She helps a lot of folks, and so I just wanted to get together with you to just introduce you to the Foodie Nation. I see that in the pledge group, a lot of people actually seem to have, well, I don't know if I'd say a lot, but quite a few people seem to have your books. I feel like we have room to grow there, but they've posted about your books and things. And so I feel like there's some awareness, but I feel like, you know, after getting to know you, getting your books, going to your website, I feel like a lot more people need to know you. So I just want to give folks the setup. I met you face-to-face at the Obesity Action Coalition Your Weight Matters convention in Denver this last year. And see, guys, you need to go to the convention because that's, yeah. Kristin is the kind of people you meet there. But I just wanted to start out by just tell us a little bit about you, your background, how you came to be working with the bariatric community in the way that you do, and what do you do?
So thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm really excited, and I'm really excited to be a sponsor of the pledge this year. So thank you. I'm honored.
Thank you.
So a little bit about me. Well, I am a 5-year VSG post-op, and I've lost 200 pounds, and I've kept it off for the entirety of the 5 years. And I was a therapist long before I ever had surgery. And as I talk about in my book, one of the big things that I dealt with was a lot of shame and a lot of struggle when it came to my own weight loss journey. So I was someone who went up and down and up and down and up and down, and I tried absolutely everything. And again, I detail that in the book, more towards the beginning. And I decided to enter a PhD program because I'm a little bit of an overachiever, and I did it when I was 8 months pregnant with my son. So we're going on.
Wow.
Yes. And as I went through, finished my comprehensive exam, and I started my dissertation, I decided that I would work on the topic of what is the process of lifestyle change for women who undergo bariatric surgery or who have undergone. And my PhD mentor said to me, "Are you currently working in the field?" And I said, "Well, kind of, sort of, but not really." And she said, "Well, I think you have a lot of information and a lot of value to add since this is your research project." And so I started putting my feelers out there, and I started getting some more information and attending some different mentorship opportunities. And then, of course, being a patient, dug into the research and the literature. And so started working more regularly with people, and then said, you know what, I think I need to write articles on this topic. So I started to reach out to different communities, and such as OAC, to write different articles. And then I was asked to speak at another conference in 2017 and said, okay, I'm going to write a book. And my deadline is October of 2017. And I said,
well, can we pause there? Smart goal, guys. Smart. That was everything about that goal was really SMART. Okay, we'll get back to that later. But yes, thank you.
Yes, because it put me out there, and then I committed, and I told them, hey, I'm releasing a book the same day on Kindle that I will be at the conference. Can I give it away free while I'm at the conference? Because Kindle only allows you to have 3 days free. And they said, sure. So this also put me under the gun to get this done, but to put absolutely everything that I knew about my journey and about the people that I'd worked with in this book. And the tools that weren't out there, the tools that I had not seen before, from all of my personal growth journey, professional development journey, I put them all in the book. And so that was kind of the journey that led me here. Plus, I have a passion because in the research, not from my own personal journey, but from the research, I had seen that 40% of people will regain weight within 5 years. And I said, well, I don't want that to be me. And if this is an issue, how come we're not talking about it? How come we're not helping people through this? How come we're not getting the resources out to the front lines and helping people deal with the stuff that they need to deal with to overcome these obstacles to keep the weight off long term? Isn't that what this surgery is supposed to do? Mm-hmm. So I could go on and on, but I will stop there. The essence of my journey.
So now you work with bariatric patients and bariatric candidates. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now on the mindset shifts, I tell you, I'm going to mess that up like 4
No, it's all good.
Mindset shifts they need to make to live a healthy life. So let me ask you this. What do you think are, I don't know how many there would be, like 3, 4, 5, however many you can think of. What are some important mindset shifts that you find that people come to you needing to make when they are in this process or getting prepared for this process?
So all or nothing thinking is huge in this population. If I can teach people that if you mess up at lunch, that doesn't mean that you can eat on track for dinner. But the biggest thing that I see is the all or nothing thinking that, oh my gosh, I messed up, I'm a total failure. And so we need to do better with changing our thought process about that. Because it's just not true. So the all or nothing thinking is a huge issue and something that I really help to build mindset shifts on. Balance, which is also going with reducing the all or nothing thinking. We need to have some balance in our lives. Mm-hmm. And I work primarily with emotional eaters. So because I am not a food addict, and I know that there are amazing people in the field who work with food addicts. I am not a food addict. I don't take that on. I definitely work with emotional eaters and people who go up and down the emotional roller coaster and who even may not even think that they are an emotional eater, but are a bored eater. So mindset shifts, other mindset shifts that I see are people who come into their own, who never had a voice before, who didn't know how to, I'm using my fingers here, who didn't have a voice before, who didn't know how to vocalize or stand up for themselves. So now they're learning how to build boundaries for the first time in their lives and actually saying what they want out of their lives, and who may have been completely unfulfilled before. And you know who these people are, because these are the people that, whether they've worked with someone like me or not, they've started to find a way to be fulfilled and feel fulfilled. And the people who are ready to get off of the diet roller coaster and start moving towards fulfillment, because the goal is not the finish line. It's figuring out what you want beyond the goal. Because if you don't figure out what you want beyond the goal, people subconsciously, because the subconscious mind works on old programming, what will happen is people recreate the diet cycle. So they'll inadvertently.
Oh my good gracious. Yes.
They'll inadvertently.
Yes. It's like, I see that all the time where people get like, they get to, they're approaching their goal weight, which, I think I am not one who is against goal weights in any way, shape, or form, but I do rail against the fact that a number should dictate your whole life, your happiness, your sense of self. It is one metric about you, and yes, it's important for your health, but I see a lot of folks who are approaching that point, and then they go off the rails, and then they come back to me and they say, oh, well, I've regained, and now I have to, and so I often wonder, like in that cycle, and I've been in that cycle before, where I'm wondering if I'm putting myself back into that cycle because it's what I know. I don't know how to be happy and content.
Yes.
I know how to be in the struggle.
Right. And so essentially the mindset shifts that I really love to cultivate in my clients and the people I work with is giving up the struggle. And they don't know how to do that because their entire life they've been attached to the struggle. And so the mindset shifts that I help people work on are giving up the struggle and really living in ease and flow of this new lifestyle, and then helping them prep for what I would call doomsday. But essentially it's the crap that happens in life. Like, and I was telling you earlier, like, God forbid your parent passes away, or you have to put somebody in hospice, or you really recognize that you've outgrown your marriage. And not everybody does. I have an amazing marriage. I'm grateful. But maybe you put up with stuff before surgery because you didn't think you could find anybody else. And so now you realize, oh, this is not what I really want. I'm not living in alignment with who I really am. And I got to let this go. And then as a result of just divorce in general, or moving cross country, or finding a new job, or all of these life issues, people go back to the old programming because it's what they know, because they haven't really created the long-term lifestyle changes and the mindset shifts to take them through that new leg of their journey. Mm-hmm. And then I would say, because there's so many mindset shifts, but I would also say cultivating self-belief and really stepping out and asking for what they want, because so many people live in fear and self-doubt, and they let their fears run everything. Fears about absolutely everything. And I mean, it could be financial fears. It could be family fears. It could be, and that's the other thing I see, anxiety that you didn't know existed because you soothed with food. All of a sudden,
you got to feel those feelings.
You got to feel those feelings. Or now I see people that go, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious. Is this a result of the surgery? And I'm like, no, honey, welcome. This is because you've always stuffed it down with food. And now it's coming up. And now we get to use the tools to release the anxiety in these other ways, these healthy ways, these coping tools, these new coping mechanisms, so that you can release the need to ever go back to the food to soothe, so that you don't regain, and so that you can actually deal with the anxiety in a healthy way.
And that is, yeah, I feel like that should be like a required part of like the bariatric programs, they take you through a lot of pre-op education, and a lot of people seem to, and with good reason, they give a lot of stock to the education that their surgeon's offices give, because, the person doing the surgery. But in the aftermath, it's like some of these minds, it's hard to navigate, because some of those situations you just said are situations I've been through. Unfortunately, my mother passed away in 2012. That was a gut punch to me, and I wasn't quite prepared for how I was going to deal with that. I'm going through another shift now, because my oldest is in college and my youngest is about to go to college. So I'm about to go
empty
nest syndrome, which, we always joke about how happy we're going to be when our kids go out the door. But, I was really thinking about that on my walk the other day. It's like, who am I if I'm not these two people's mother? What do I do with my time? What do I buy? What do I spend my money and my time on?
Right.
It's like,
who am I without them?
Who am I? But let me ask you this, because as a community leader in this space, I often see a lot of people struggle after surgery. And yes, some people do struggle in the year or so after surgery, because it is a complete lifestyle change. You have to get used to a lot of things while simultaneously your body kind of hates you. So that is hard. But a lot of what I see in my community is folks who are further out, who for one reason or another thought that there would be a time where they get to quote unquote like graduate or move past having to think so much about their mindset, having to think so much about their healthy habits, having to think so much about, how all of that has an impact on how they eat, how they treat themselves, and their weight. And so when folks tend to come into my space, it's because they have fallen, that infamous phrase, they've gone off track. And so they come back into my spaces not quite knowing what to do. What is the first thing that I should do? What is, how can I get back on track? I want to get back toward what I set out to do. And a lot of times folks come back, yes, they are off track, but they come back with an amazing amount of perspective about what they actually want versus what they thought they wanted at the beginning. Right. So I just wonder from you, like, do you see that in your work? And then also, like, what are some of the things that you advise people to do to start getting themselves back from the mode of, I was just doing everything and anything. I wasn't really paying attention. I wasn't in a healthy space, to getting back to being more mindful and having those practicing those mindset shifts that they need to be healthy?
Yeah. So that's a great question, because I see that all the time too, is, okay, but Kristin, I just want to know how to get to goal. So it goes back to, one thing goes back to what I said earlier, which is, if you don't know what you want beyond getting to goal, you will recreate that diet struggle, that cycle. So there's one thing. So in terms of getting back on track, the first thing also that I see with people is they want everything now. So we live in a very instant gratification society. not even gonna lie. It is what it is. We want everything now. We want it to be as fast as it was when we first lost right after surgery. And I think that's where people get discouraged because they're in a hurry. They're in a rush. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is slow your roll, like slow down, because you've got to do like a little bit of a reset. And I don't mean a pouch reset. God help me with that.
That's right. A whole other conversation. You can come back.
That's another conversation for another day.
After
but what I mean is you need to get back in touch with you at the core. So I actually have a new mini course that's coming out that talks about the basics. It's a 4-part video course that talks about why people get off track, how people get off track, how people can get back on track. And it gives a lot of details into how to help you set yourself up for success in the long term. And it is a good companion to the book because I go a whole lot deeper into what the basics are, why the basics are important. And the basics, in my opinion, are protein, water, movement, fitness, supplements, and sleep. And that is because, and I wrote it in my book as well, that people who sleep less are actually statistically, according to the research, likely to eat 400 more calories a day than people who sleep. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And so sleep is important for your body to repair. So that's just one snippet. So when I start to talk to people about getting back on track, again, when I say people want it all at once, they get overwhelmed. And so this is why I love you're doing this in February instead of January, because everybody in January talks about New Year's resolutions. I hate resolutions. And the reason for that is they overload our brain. When and I jokingly call it the cheeseburgers to salads philosophy. So if somebody's eaten like cheeseburgers, and I'm usually thinking about a non-bariatric person, and they're like, okay, I'm going to go eat salads, and I'm going to go to the gym 6 days a week, and I'm going to drink my water, and I'm going to do this and that. And they have this great plan, but life does not work that way. Nobody's life does. Nobody's. And so they have these great intentions. And then by week 2, they're exhausted because they have depleted their calories. So when we think of somebody who's just on a regular, off track, they're getting in several thousand calories and they're reducing to, let's say, 1,000 or so. So they're already exhausted. They're overworking out. They may not be getting in enough fluids. Their sleep is messed up because their body's going, what the HE double hockey sticks have you done to me?
It's in bariatric foodie, it's okay to say hell.
Oh, yes. Okay. So, I have a potty mouth, y'all, so I'm trying to keep
I say hell all the time. Like in the review of your books, I was like, what the hell are these books? Yes.
So what the hell is going on? So what happens is you overload the circuits here, because I call this the master computer. You overload the circuits and then you're like, screw it, I'm done. And then by week 3, you can't keep up the momentum because it's too much, too soon. You've overwhelmed your brain because it's just not possible. And it's not because you're not possible. You are. You're awesome. You're amazing. And people say all the time, what's wrong with me? And I say this in my mini course. There is nothing wrong with you. You need to learn how to work this machine, which is essentially what it is. And you want everything now. You want this fixed, right? Because that's what you want. You want it fixed. You want it back to that lower weight, and you want it now. And that's just not how it works. So you've got to be patient with your body. You've got to start small, intricate, steps, and build up to having what I call all of these balls in the air. So the 5 basics, you've got to get to where you're producing a good rhythm with all of them. And there are going to be days where your water's down. There are going to be days where you don't hit your protein goal. There are going to be days where you don't hit your fitness goal. And that's okay. And if you freak out, that's where you think, I'm bad, I'm wrong. And that's where the all or nothing thinking comes in. And so what I teach people to do is slow your roll, be patient with your body. If you've stalled, let's go over here. Here are some things you can do, but be patient and don't overthink it. one step at a time, you will get there. It's not going to happen overnight. And so those are the very basics of what I want people to get, because I think the extremism is what really throws people in an emotional downturn, and it can get really crazy really fast.
Yeah, I so agree. And it's like, I don't know, sometimes you get yourself into such a flurry of just being stressed out and reacting to stress and stressed out and reacting to stress that you don't know how to get out of that cycle. And so I want to just stress again that it's really good to have a place, a person, whoever it is, whether it's Kristin, whether it's your own therapist, whether it's your clergy, whether it's just a
Yeah,
trusted advisor, to
right.
get outside your own head and get some perspective on these things. But question, the course that you talked about, is that the same one that folks are able to enroll in for
Yep.
the Bariatric Foodie Pledge? Awesome. So unfortunately, I feel like I could talk to you for like 4 hours.
I know.
I know the foodies are like, Nikki, don't you make a 4-hour video. We're not hanging with you for 40
I know.
well, I definitely want to have you back on the show after the pledge, and we'll, work out our schedules to make sure that we're all in a groove. But I want you to also talk about, you have these books that you're giving away as a prize, which are an awesome prize, because when I went through the books, it was just like, and I'll sort of give my little comments as you're going through each book, but there was stuff about each one of them that I really, really loved. And then maybe at the after you tell us about the books, tell us again about the mini course, and just remind us what we're going to get with that. So you have these books, and show us the books, and then how do you envision that we use these books as tools for our success?
So, and I want to add something to what you said earlier that I don't include I do include it in the mini course, but not in the first part, which is stress. So when we get stressed because we're not on track or we're getting off track, we have to remember that our body stores sugar when we release cortisol, when our stress hormones beef up. So if you're stressed about your weight loss process, you could actually potentially physiologically be storing released glucose that goes into your system, which I talk about in my book, because stress is another factor. And actually, I again attend these CEUs, and there was this bariatrician that said the two biggest reasons that people regain weight is stress and sleep. And how you get off track is stress. So Bariatric Mindset Success is what I call the book. So when people are asking me about my books, I'm like, this is the book. This is the reader. This is versus the workbook, right? So the book, I go into like chapter 1, I talk about a little bit about my story so that the reader can connect with me and understand that I get where they're coming from, and then I know their perspective. And usually after people dig into chapter 1, they're like, oh my gosh, this is my story. And yet we all have a different story, but I talk about your former self, and chapter 2 is more about living this new lifestyle. And then chapter 3 and 4 go into commitment and consistency, because I think that is what's so big for this journey. Chapter 5 is about your social support, because you cannot go at it alone. We as human creatures need constant human connection. And even if you're an introvert, we still need support. And then kind of moving on, chapter 6, I talk about emotional eating. And then chapter 7 is where a lot of the tools are. And I go through a lot of different tools. I go over self-love, why it's important, how you can get to a place where you actually honor and love yourself. And self-love is not what people think. Self-compassion is important. And I also give different tools. So I'm an energy psychology practitioner. So I do EFT, which is basically acupressure techniques. And I have that whole modality in here. I talk about why meditation, quieting your mind, releasing stressors, visualizations, which is used in sports psychology, how that is important for reaching goal and beyond. And then in chapter 8, I talk about your relationships and how to make your relationships better, and how to kind of talk to your partner or your friends, and things that may come up, friends that are jealous. And then in chapter 9, I go about talking about staying on track and avoiding regain. And then chapter 10 is really about getting to know the new you. And so there's a lot in here, a lot.
Yes, there is a lot in it. I'm actually still working through that book. I read most of it, but in order to do the review. But then, of course, me, my brain, squirrel. So I do that. But I've been picking it back up. I actually have I always have I have what I call a backpack book, because I take the bus back and forth to work every day, and it's about a 45-50 minute drive. And so I have a backpack book, so I'll just pull out book in my backpack and plug away. So you're my backpack book.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, and then for the people who don't want to read, it's on Audible. That was a labor of love. It took me about 4 months, and I had somebody listen to it over and over and over because yes, but it's on Audible.
I don't want to think about what that process is like.
I know.
have cookbooks. I don't know that people do cookbooks on Audible, but maybe they do, but I'm not going to. So anyway, moving right along.
The 3 month, we have a 3 month and 6 month accountability workbook. It is exactly the same, except one is longer, it's thicker. And at the beginning of each month, it's a 5-week per month. It goes accountability by month.
Yes.
And there is a little checkoff calendar, and it goes with what are you feeling, and then on any given day, which could give insight into what you eat or don't eat, why you eat or don't eat. And then food log, water, supplements, exercise, and your journal, journal today. And then it has a monthly fitness goals page, which again, people can get overwhelmed. It can be as simple as you want it to be. You do not have to fill this page out if it does not resonate with you.
And it can be something as simple as walk 10 minutes a day or 5 minutes a day or whatever.
Right. So habits to build, habits to break. And the reason I did this with a 2-to-1 ratio is so many people think about what they're supposed to stop doing. And for a healthy mindset, we need to focus on what we will do, because that's how our brain receives information. If we focus on what we're not supposed to do, then it's like reverse psychology. We want to do that thing.
Yeah, and see, one of the things that I tell people, I don't know if you would agree or disagree with this statement. I got it from somewhere, although I can't exactly remember the citation of where. But I tell people all the time that habits are things that you do, not things that you don't do. So, because when you tell people what's your worst habit? Oh, well, I don't exercise. I was like, well, habits are things that you do, not things that you don't do. So maybe a habit that you want to develop is exercise, sort of thing. So I like the way that was laid out, because it sort of
well, and the habits
guides you into
What I thought about was more of somebody who really wants to quit smoking.
Yeah.
Whereas a habit to build might be drinking more water.
Yeah.
And then we kind of go in a pre-weekly check-in, which is more of an emotional assessment of how is my week going to set up? Because then you get to see, do I have soccer practice? Am I traveling for work this week? What's going on? So that when you look at your meal plan and what's happening in your schedule, you can kind of prepare for potential pitfalls, overcome them before they even get to you.
Yes.
And then there's a meal planner on this page. And then here there's a grocery list. Yes. And then here's what, again, you can fill out whatever resonates, because I know some people who use this workbook, but they use MyFitnessPal or Bariatric. They don't actually fill in this page, and that's okay, because the other pages serve them. So this is what you actually ate or what you actually did in terms of fitness. And then the last page, the last 2 pages before the whole thing restarts again, is what I call the shame shifter. And the reason I call this the shame shifter is it's a post-weekly check-in. And it really assesses how did you do. And here's my favorite part, because we have the all or nothing thinkers, which is how did you do this? How much did you stay on plan? How often? 100, 80, 60, 40, 20, 0 versus I totally failed or I totally succeeded. You're able to look at that, and then you're able to say, okay, if I stayed on plan over 60%, which some people might not consider a success, but yay, what worked for you? And then you can take that information. I'm all about learning and growing from your data. So what did you do that you can improve upon? And then if you didn't do well, if you got less than 60%, what caused you to go off track?
Yes. And see, here's the thing, guys, I want you to I'm gonna look at the camera here, and I want all of my foodies, all of my pledgers to look at the camera here. First of all, you guys, if you ever thought that, like, because when you do check-in for the pledge, I ask some of the similar stuff. I ask you what to restate your goal. I ask whether now I do the yes or no whether or not they achieved the goal or not.
Right, right.
But the next question is, what challenged or inspired you this week? And then how are you going to move this goal forward? So it's sort of the same sort of like process. It's like processing it, thinking about what happened, thinking about what came up in your way, thinking about what maybe helped propel you toward your goal, and then using that information to do better and to move forward with yourself.
Right.
So, I just wanted to tell you, I didn't know Kristin before this year, but I'm so like, I'm tickled that that sort of jives. So that's awesome. So anyway.
And then the last thing that I would say also is so many people will focus on what they didn't do, how they suck this week, how they're awful. And so I have people focus on their successes. What did you succeed at? What was one thing that went well? What was one NSD that you had, one awareness that you had? And then I ask them, what was your struggle? Because again, your brain needs that 3-to-1 ratio, because your brain, we are programmed to think, to look for the negative. So we're hardwired for fear. And I talk about this quite frequently, in that we're hardwired for fear. We're constantly on the alert for looking for that saber-toothed tiger, because that's how we kept ourselves safe back in the Stone Age. Now, our brain is looking for fear in a different way. Is our boss going to yell at us? Is our spouse going to yell at us? Do we have enough money to pay our bills? Like, fear comes in different aspects. So what I want to help people to see is what's going well, because that's going to reprogram also your belief systems, what you believe about yourself, whether you believe you're going to succeed or not. And believing is really half of the part. And then the last book, which is Rediscover You, that I'm giving away, this is what I would call, this is really getting to know the new you. And so it's basically a series of 75 journaling prompts with pages that ask not necessarily bariatric questions, but it could be
life questions.
Questions, because what I see most frequently, and this happened to me as an 18-month post-op, was, okay, who am I? Who am I now? Because for so long this is how I felt about myself. I was the fat chick that just kept gaining and losing and gaining and losing. And that was such a big part of my life that I couldn't define my own desires. I couldn't define what I really wanted or who I was. And so I think that is such a huge part of the process, that when you start to dig underneath, you can find yourself. And that's why it's called Rediscover You, because you're rediscovering, you're being completely honest with who you are in this post-op life. And if you've been covering it up or hiding it or just not really honoring your true self, this is where you figure that out.
That is so important too, because just sort of spending that and dedicating it, it forces you to dedicate a little bit of time every day to yourself, because you have all those people who are all running, doing things for everybody else. But if you get this journal, I would suggest that you take, you put it on your calendar, block it off, like either in the morning or in the evening, or some regular interval of time, maybe not every day, but some regular interval of time where you take for yourself to sit down and really like think about that. And as I was doing it, it actually brought up like a lot of like not just stuff where I was like, wow, but it was like, some good memories, some parts of myself where I was like, oh wow, that, I used to do this and I don't do this anymore, and it used to bring me such joy. Why don't I do that anymore, sort of thing, which is awesome. But I want to make sure that we get to this mini course that we can sign up for and get it's you on video, yes. Right? Okay.
It's me. I'm talking. You don't necessarily see me because I have the PowerPoints, and this is the most awesome part that I want to share. So a lot of the stuff that I'm sharing is some of the things that people ask me to come and speak on at support groups. Okay. So there's that. And it's a huge informational knowledge session, but there's one worksheet for each module. So there's 4 worksheets in addition to different handouts that I have provided either at conferences or at support groups. So there's actually, I think there's 8 handouts total and a wealth of information. And I want to say if you break up all 4 videos, it's probably about 2 to 2.5 hours in length. I'd have to look, maybe 2 hours. So when you sign up for it, you're going to get about 1 video a week so that you really have some time to spend with it. And then you can go back to the emails and review it again. But it's a very knowledgeable info course. And I will tell you, I took my time with it, because when I give a similar presentation at support group meetings, people look at me at the end like this.
They were like deer in the headlights.
They're just deer in the headlights, because there's so much information. So much information. And then they're like, okay, so where do I get your stuff? And there is so much information that you can take and run with it and implement with it. And then there's just some people who come back and want to go deeper and then want to know about other stuff that I've produced. But the goal of this course is to give you a running head start, to give you the information that a lot of people don't have in their hands right out of the gate, to help support you getting back on track. And it will blow your mind in a good way, but please, one step at a time. Do not overwhelm yourself. I'm the queen of giving a lot of information because I want people to be informed, and at the same time, because other people are overachievers, they want to get it super fast. And so my reminder is slow your roll. You may have to watch it once or twice. That's okay. And
come back to it.
It's my goal to support you in growing so that you can also keep the weight off.
And I think you are awesome for providing this for the pledgers, because this is, guys, I don't want to I really want you to consider what Kristin has done here. This is a 4-part series. It is these presentations that she does at support groups. I'm assuming that sometimes she even gets paid to do these at support groups. She's providing this for you for free with the worksheet so that you can sit down, because I have a lot of people who come to me, how do I get back on track? What do I think about? Why do I keep doing the same thing over and over again? Why do I sabotage myself? This is something that can help you in that realm, and all you have to do is sign up for it. When you get the emails, if you're not quite ready to dive right into it right now, you have it. Put it in a folder in your inbox. I know you. Put it in the folder in your inbox. And put it in the folder in your inbox. Mark it something where you know what it is. Come back to it when you're ready to, when you have time to, and work through it. But I also wanted to make sure, because I realized we didn't say it a minute ago before we close, is that your books are all available on Amazon. Because I can imagine, like, when I play this on Bariatric Foodie Live, people are going to be like, where do you get the books? So they're on Amazon. Everything is on Amazon. Look up Kristin's name. I will have it in the status message after the live program.
I will say my married name is not on any of.
Yeah, I think it's just Kristin Lloyd. But if you look up Bariatric Mindset, though,
Bariatric Mindset. Yeah.
And then also, I put your books in my recommended products on my website. So if you go to bariatricfoodie.com/Amazon, you'll be able to see them there too. And it'll be without all of the clutter of all the other crap that you could buy on Amazon, like little cat toys and whatever.
And the questions that I put in the worksheet are for building awareness. And again, one of the other things that I say, not my original quote, but I truly believe in, is awareness is the mother of change. And I had even written an email to my list a while back that was about Bird Box. And I was like, because if you're walking through life like this, you're going to bump into stuff. You have to be aware. And if you're not aware and you just walking around blinders on, you're going to run into stuff. You're going to end up regaining weight just because you're not conscious about what you're doing. You're on old autopilot thinking.
Yes. So I think that is, well, no, there's not a perfect place to stop, because like I said, we could talk.
I know.
But we do have to stick, because yes, but I would love to have you back to talk about some of these issues more in depth, and let people know how that they can get access to you. But thank you so much. Thank you for supporting the pledge. Thank you for creating this course that folks can sign up for. I will put the link, like I said, in the status message after Bariatric Foodie Live. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.